Hello, this is UKRLIFE with Ludmila Nemyria, and we continue our broadcasting from Kiev. And we are very happy that our guest today is Tom Cooper. He is an Austrian military analyst, famous Austrian militarist, and many people in Ukraine read your analytical research, your analysis of war. Thank you for being with us today, Tom, and thank you for your analysis. Hello.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. Tom, 3 years of big war, and it seems that it's time to make some conclusions or to summarize some results of maybe last year and to speak about perspectives and future. And let's start from this conclusion. What do you think, what did Ukraine succeed and do not succeed, and where we are right now? I know that it is a big question. I know.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. Basically, this year, or let's say last year, 2024, was not a very good one for Ukraine because it brought up all the troubles of the country to the surface and fully exposed them. And the current administration of President Zelensky is obviously entirely wrong in place if one expects it to sort out the situation, to solve the problems of the country. So you have, on the contrary, you have seen this. You have had a year where this administration should have taken care to reform the armed forces, to reform itself as well, first and foremost, then to reform the armed forces, to build up reserves, to train, to mobilize more troops. And the way to mobilize more troops is through unifying the population, and it failed in all of these regards. It is continuing to disunite the society, and therefore there is also a growing problem with mobilization. Therefore, there is also a growing problem with lack of reforms on the political scene, and as a direct result of all of this, there is also lack of reforms within the armed forces. And now these armed forces, under the present command structure, they cannot reform. And because they cannot reform, they cannot improve their efficiency, combat effectiveness. And because of this, well, we have seen what has happened in Avdiivka early this year. We have seen what is happening in Toretsk, what is happening in Chasiv, and lately in Kurakhove and Pokrovsk, not to talk about Velika Novosietka. Absolutely unnecessary terrain losses, absolutely unnecessary losses in soldiers, in life, in equipment, and so on. So all of this caused by nothing else but, it is sad to use that word, incompetence. Incompetence at the top of the Ukrainian civilian and military leadership. And that is the situation right now. On the other side, we have the Russians, hell bent on Putin's incompetence and megalomania, and everybody is very happy over there. They're sent to death by their thousands every day. And majority of Russians, which means the majority of Russians living in Moscow, first and foremost, and then in St. Petersburg, are fine with that because this is having very little impact upon them, because the mass of Russians mobilized and killed in this war is not living in Moscow or in St. Petersburg. And the economy is on the brink of a disaster in Russia. But that's also fine because, again, people, or the majority of people in Moscow, but majority of people in St. Petersburg is not feeling it strongly enough yet, or at least they're not losing too much. And everything is fine. So the things are going to go on like this probably for at least a year longer. That's the situation after 3 years of war, so to say.
Tom, you say about incompetence.
Yes.
It looks like impossible to speak about incompetence because our army is in big war, in huge war, 3 years. And how it is possible to speak about incompetence after involving in such big war?
Well, the fact that your army is still fighting, this is an achievement of the troops who are on the ground, who are in the trenches and fighting there and operating artillery systems. They are fighting, despite the incompetence at the top. The point is this: if you have competent leadership, this would have, after 3 years of war, you wouldn't have a problem like following. For example, you have 30-something training centers, and every training center has a different quality of training it is providing to the troops, to freshly mobilized troops. You are working on the TV. Now imagine yourself trying to work with the following team. Your boss hires 10 people, and out of these 10 people, they're all supposed to be capable of operating the camera and the microphone and record all the machinery necessary for you to air your program. So out of these 10 people, 7 turned out not to be trained at all, never to have ever before worked with the TV, have absolutely no idea how to operate cameras, how to operate light, how to operate the sound. And of the 3 others, 1 has never worked with the microphones you are using. Another has never used the software you are using to communicate with me right now. And the third, well, he is perhaps quite good at recording the sound. So this is what you have in your army. This is the situation, and this is not the fault of the people down, at the bottom, people who are actually fighting the war, who are pulling the triggers, the soldiers. This is a failure of GlavCom. And GlavComs, I call them buddies in the general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces. There's plenty of generals. I do not care where they're trained. I do not care how are they trained. I do not care what are their backgrounds or whatever. But the fact is, and this is the only thing I care about, is that the quality of their work is miserable. They do not care about troops they are supposed to train. They do not care about troops they are supposed to equip. And they do not care about troops they are supposed to lead into combat. They're not leading. They are sitting there and, well, everything is fine. Just send them more of faulty ammunition or don't train them. Who cares? This is the problem, this who cares? Nobody cares. At the top of the Ukrainian armed forces, very few people care. And that is why I'm talking about incompetence. All of these people belong being fired on the spot. I would recommend them, don't waste your time, send them to train them to demine, and send them to demine Kherson or Eastern Kharkiv or wherever. There's enough Ukrainians still full of unexploded ammunition and mines. What you need are younger generals, people who have combat experience from the last 10 years and as first-hand combat experience, not just like us commanders sitting in Kiev, but first-hand on the terrain, directly looking at the Russians, advancing at them. Such people, those who have proven themselves, who have proven their skills and their capabilities, they should be put in command. You have also ever more commanders speaking out. We have now, meanwhile, a second Azov officer in something like 1 month criticizing your command structure and their failures and incompetence at the top. But nobody is reacting. You have such cases like this. This is a tragedy what has happened to the 155th Mechanized Brigade, which was supposed to be trained in France, and then after 8 or 9 months of more or less training, where did it end? Everybody, your media is upset about 50 troops who defected while they were in France, but nobody's talking about all the failures of the general staff of GlavCom and general staff who were all the time taking away semi-trained troops from that unit and sent them to the front line to fill different gaps. And eventually, okay, then the unit has finished its training, is returning back to Ukraine, and then first thing that happens, it was taken apart. What a surprise, it's not working, the unit is not functioning, it cannot fight. And then who is to blame? The commander. As if it was the commander who was sending his battalions to different parts of the front line. So no, it is, you have lots of incompetence at the top. The people, really, including Siersky and entire top of the general staff, and probably the next 100 to 1,000 generals, should all belong being fired on the spot and sent for training in demining and replaced by somebody who can't. Of course, you're not going to instantly find people who can't do their job, because a brigade commander or battalion commander is not automatically excellent division commander or corps commander or the force commander. Nobody said that. So you have but you have to change the people at the top, and then check the replacements. Okay, is he doing that job well? No, he is not. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, you are not good enough. Make the place free, and let's try it with somebody else. This is the process. And you go through this process for a few months, and that's it. After 6 or 7 months, you find the right people, and they're doing their job. But now you have a full year, and nobody's doing his job properly. Actually, you have 2 years since, almost 2 years since CSK has taken over, and you have meanwhile a complete chaos in the ZSU, where you have one brigade somewhere, let's say, in Pokrovsk area. One battalion is up in Kupiansk, another battalion is in Velika Novosilka. Perhaps artillery group and 2 support elements are somewhere in Pokrovsk area. And what is it doing there, actually? Such a unit cannot fight, while its elements are trained to fight together. Battalions of the same brigade are trained to fight together, to listen to the orders of commanders. They understand each other in best fashion, and so on. No, this CSK is all the time distributing battalions from the same brigade to different parts of the front line. Take the Toretsk area. There's a 100 mechanized brigade over there, plus a few other brigades, plus several independent battalions. So CSK now needs a separate battalion to patch up the front line in Velika Novosilka area. What is he doing? Is he taking out one of the independent battalions? No. He takes one of the battalions of one of the brigades that is there. This is complete there and holding the front line well. No, he takes this battalion out of that brigade and sends it to Velika Novosilka. But none of the independent battalions that are there. So this is absolutely making no sense. And I can tell you, I have several colleagues, and we are talking about this at least once a week, and we are just like this. How can this be? Why is he doing this? Because it's making absolutely no sense what CSK is doing. Neither CSK nor several others. That is the primary problem Ukraine has right now, and if CSK remains in his position, it's going to have this problem forever, because he's not going to let neither CSK nor the generals, his buddies, many of them are his personal friends. They're not going to let any of new, fresh, young, energetic generals or colonels take over. They are going to break and to block as long as it takes, just to retain their fortes and their offices, and because they know everything better, nobody else does.
Tom, now it is a big discussion in Ukraine about the reforms in army, about the reforms in structure of management of army. Do you think that it could be helpful for decision of problem you speak about right now? For example, the transition to corps, to division, to what do you think? Could it be helpful in reality? Such transition, such reform.
You either reform or you lose this war. It's that simple. So it's not even a question if it is helpful, but it is the only way forward. Because the alternative is for Ukraine to lose the war. So you urgently need complete reform. And this reform must start. There is no other way. This is obvious now after 2 years of CSK. There's no other way out of this situation but to remove CSK and at least 100 top generals from the general staff. They all have to go. I'm sorry to say, this is brutal, I know. And I'm an Austrian, and who am I to say? I understand all such complaints. But the fact is, based on my own experience, partly from military service, partly from economy, from private sector, if you do not replace those who are in charge, a reform in this situation is absolutely impossible. While you need, urgently, you need a reform in order to make your armed forces more effective. But this is not happening precisely because of the generals who are in charge. They are breaking because they know if somebody else is put in their position or in the position next to them, and he proves as a skilled, as a good manager, capable officer, they are going to be in trouble, because such a person is going to instantly expose them as the weak links in the chain of command, and they're going to get fired as next. Therefore, not only Sierski, but all of his buddies are breaking, and making themselves as wide as possible in order to prevent a reform, which is urgently necessary. Because the way the things are going now, you're going to lose this war. If nothing else, because in 2 or 3 or 4 years, you're going to lose, they are going to waste all of the troops you have. And what then? Who is then going to fight? Because they're not going to fight. They're not fighting even now, the generals. They're just, appearing important and commanding from afar, from 500 kilometers away, and such things. You have, I said, you need an entirely new general staff, which as first is standardizing everything, which in turn needs standardized procedures, standardized rules of service, which are adapted to the last 10 years, or meanwhile it's almost 12 years of combat experience. And then you need to apply this experience and these procedures in training, and that training from bottom up, from recruits, from mobilized people, via those who already have combat experience, up to officers who are in command. They all have to be retrained in order to create a new service culture in the armed forces, where the officers care about their troops, where the troops are responsible to the officers, but also feeling proud for their service, and not just hiding in some holes and handing, perhaps 3 of them are reloading one machine gun and handing it to the only soldier fighting in that trench. This is the usual practice in the ZSU. Excuse me. You have to really mercilessly reform all of this, remove all of such misbehavior in training centers, misbehavior in organization, in the Ministry of Defense. I'm in touch with several arms dealers abroad, and none of them wants to deal with the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. If you want to sell arms or ammunition to Ukraine, you have to pay a cut, which is depending, of course, on the total value of the deal in question, between 1 or 2% and up to 20%. So what are the people doing? They're searching, arms dealers abroad are searching for ways to connect with representatives of different governments of the EU. This is taking its time. Then they deal with them, and then they ship to EU, and then EU is shipping, different members of the EU are shipping to Ukraine, which means everything is taking 2 or 3 times longer than if they would be dealing directly with Ukraine. And costs who knows how much more, which is unnecessary. Theoretically, if your government would be functional, actually, reformed and functional, it could say, okay, listen, EU, let's make a deal. You send me the money, I'm taking care of the weapons, and I'm buying what I need. But your government is unable to doing even that, because as soon it knows, the government is first. As soon as it starts getting money, just the money from abroad, but nothing else, who knows how much of that money is going to disappear, in whose pockets? Because there is still corruption. This corruption is meanwhile back to the times from, what was the name, Yanukovych, when the Maidan revolution erupted back in 2014. It is that bad from what I hear. So whoever is making some kind of decisions abroad first has to find some contacts abroad who have good contacts in Ukraine, dependable people, in order to make any kind of deals with Ukraine. But ever less people are really working with official points of contact in Kiev. I mean, this is that bad.
Do you think that such reforms are possible because the war is so big, the battlefield is too long, and on every part of this battlefield, it is a very hot situation? You know about that?
I know about how big is this battlefield. I mean, actually, I know. It is, for a single human being, it is nearly unimaginable how long and how tough is this front line alone. How huge is this war? How many people are involved? How many arms? You have not only 1,200 to 1,500 kilometers of front line. You have the depth of the front line is at least 100 kilometers. So you are not fighting only on the front line, but you're fighting 100, 200 kilometers behind the front line as well. And I mean, every day. This is an unsafe zone behind the front line of 100 to 200 kilometers. The people are not safe. There could be a missile strike any time now. So it is a huge war, no doubt about this. Absolutely no discussion. But wars are best times for reforms. It's much easier to reform during the war than at peace, especially in a democracy. Essentially, in a democracy at peace, you are discussing every single detail and arranging and entering compromises and reaching compromises with different political parties or actors, or interest groups, or whatever you want to call them, commercial interests anyway, until you sort out theoretically the best solution for everybody. At war, you have, especially when you are facing a war like Ukraine is facing, which means that you are facing a war of extermination, where your nation, where the aim of the invader is to exterminate your nation and the country, physically and emotionally, psychically as well, and historically. For Putin, the aim is destruction of Ukraine. That is the ultimate aim. You can say, okay, the lesser aim is just take these 4 oblasts in the east and south, and he's going to be happy. Perhaps not. But the point is this: when you're facing such circumstances, it's much easier to reform because there is no other way but to reform, and everybody is going to accept this if they see there are results from this. But if the people are fighting, and their spouses at home, the kids, the relatives, the families are supporting them, but the government is doing nothing, and the corruption is only growing, then everybody is sooner or later going to ask themselves, what are we fighting for actually? It's what the system they're imposing over there in Kiev and elsewhere is the same like Putin's. So what's the point? So again, if you want to survive as Ukraine, as a nation, as people, you need reforms, and you need them urgently. You need them right now, without any further delays, without any kind of excuses. You have to reform. And there's no other better place to start reforms but with the armed forces, because this is the first thing where the reform is felt. The moment you start reforming your armed forces are going to fight much more effectively. And then the Russians are not going to manage even the 100 meters a day. That's the point.
What do you think about the Russian army right now?
And this is not an army anymore. This is actually an armed mob. A mass of people, some with better training, others with combat experiences, no doubt about this. And uniformed, yes, because they are wearing uniforms, they appear to be an army. But they are not even an army anymore. They are really an armed mob. And their officers, the mass of their officers are absolutely useless. They're not even supposed, not even thought to be of any kind of use, but to stand there by some gate or some road and say, okay, the next wave, come on, prepare, mount the vehicles, drive out. Boom, 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 shot away. Next wave, come on, line up, yes. You jump on the car, you on that tank, okay, drive away, boom, 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 boom. They are shot away. Okay, the next wave, and this is what their officers are doing. They do not think in terms of tactically. So if we now attack around this hill, and simultaneously attack from this. No, this is the only ones left thinking under apostrophes in the Russian army are generals at the top. This is what the general staff of Ukraine wants to have the situation. Only the generals, then whether it's 15 or 100 of them, only they are thinking. Nobody else. Nobody else has the right to think. On the contrary, they should all turn off their brains and just rush. Just do what the generals at the top tell them to do. And this is what the mass of Russians are doing. They're really, okay, I'm a soldier, I'm going to fight the Ukrainians, great, fantastic. Turn off my brain, charge. Boom, blown up, lost a leg or arm or an eye or whatever. Oh, I've served, I'm great, I've fought the Ukrainian Nazis. This is the way the Russians think, and this is the way general staff of Ukraine would like its army to think. Which is, okay, some are calling this influence of old Soviet education they have received or whatever. I said, I do not care what kind of influence this is, but this is absolutely pointless for Ukraine to try fighting this way, because you have to lose such a war. There's no other solution, no other possible option of ending this war but for Ukraine to lose. And if you lose the war, there's no Ukraine anymore. But your generals do not understand this. They do not even think about this. All that matters is, oh, I have a nice office, I have a nice chair, it's warm, you know, in mid-January. Okay, sometimes missiles are exploding nearby, it's a little bit shaky, a little bit dust is coming down and so on. But I'm fine, you know, my family is fine. And I can buy myself a new Mercedes and perhaps a new piece of real estate in Spain or in Portugal or wherever else. I don't care about anything else. And you guys on the front line, just statistics. 300 killed today, 217 yesterday. Okay, so now I'm going back home and I spend my evening with my wife and kids, if not with somebody else. So this is the mindset which must disappear in Ukraine. You need professional officers at the top. People who might be even a little bit merciless in regards of how they dealing with incompetence. I said, put them into demining squads and send them to Kherson or to Eastern Kharkiv. There are still millions of Russian mines. You even need these mines because your own troops at the front lines are lacking mines because the generals are incompetent and Ministry of Defense is incompetent and hasn't taken care 3 years into the war to start production of mines at home, Ukraine. So you need mines, you are short on mines. So it is urgent actually to have somebody digging out Russian mines left over from 2022. And so you can recover these mines and use them on your front lines. So this is not just a joke. I mean, this is a serious issue. You need reforms, otherwise you're not going to survive, whether as the armed forces nor as a nation. And reforms at war, it's ideal time for reforms.
Tom, you know that 3 years of this big war, we spoke about weapons and support.
Yes.
And now we speak about reform. What changed? Yes. How it's happened that now we don't speak about weapons and support and we speak about reform? What's happened?
Because this is the essence. If you have reform, if you reform your armed forces, if you reform your Minister of Defense, if you reform your government, or actually the other way around, government, Minister of Defense, and your armed forces, you automatically find the weapons, you find the troops as well. And at least in my case, it is so that it took me, I admit it without any shame, it took me 3 years to understand what is going wrong in Ukraine. So you had, you know, before 2022, perhaps in 2021, I was too busy with Syria, I was too busy with Mali, I was too busy with several other wars around the planet. Wars which are distant, but still having an impact upon our everyday lives. Afghanistan as well. So once I started covering the war and analyzing the war in Ukraine, it took me time to understand where are the problems. In the case of Russians, the situation was plain simple right from the start. But in the case of Ukrainians, it was anything else than that. Ukrainians on one side were all, at least the people I was in touch with, they all claimed, oh, we are great, we are reforming, we are combating corruption, incompetence, our armed forces are the best way of becoming increasing the quality standards to those of NATO, and we are short of joining NATO. Actually, that is the quality of our officer corps, and so on and so on. And to no small degree, that was also true. Excuse me. But the question is this: you went into this war with an army of 200,000 troops back in 22. Then you mobilized some 200,000 and another 200,000. And by September, you had more troops under arms than the Russians. However, many of those troops from 2022 or before have been shot away meanwhile. They have been killed or wounded or mentally damaged to a degree that they cannot continue serving. These troops are not around anymore. And what is replacing them are poorly trained troops. If you have poorly trained troops, it doesn't matter what kind of arms, because you have mentioned arms, it doesn't matter what kind of arms are you receiving from the West, and whether this is lots of arms or just a few arms, it doesn't matter, because poorly trained troops cannot use these arms. It's as simple as that. So the same with ammunition. We have seen now in December, Germany has finally started sending 50,000 shells a month to Ukraine. Newly manufactured, German-made artillery shells, 155mm caliber. So this means that after 3 years, even the lazy, procedures-obsessed German bureaucracy, led by an incompetent government, has realized, okay, we have to increase the production, which means I have to place orders to the economy. I have to pay them 50% in advance, so that they start actually manufacturing the ammunition Ukraine needs. So even Germany has figured this out. And a sort of reform did take place over there, and they are starting to manufacture ammunition in huge numbers. So even Germany has managed this. On Ukraine didn't learn in 3 years or 4 that it has to reform, that it has to have efficient armed forces. Otherwise, it's not going to win this war, because it can't win with incompetent officers at the top. So, and this is the reason when you ask me, why are we not talking about arms anymore? The arms you have received 24, 23, if these arms would have been available to original armed forces back in 2022, you might have really driven all the way to Luhansk and all the way to Melitopol back in 2022. But 2 years later, it's too late. Now you have to take care about entirely other set of problems. These problems are starting with quality of training of your troops, which in turn would increase or improve the mobilization of additional troops, which in turn would then enable or create a new army which can use these arms which it is receiving, and now is starting to receive, I said, ammunition from Germany, a little bit more heavy weaponry from elsewhere, and also from domestic production. So things are starting to change, but the quality of your army, which was high at the start, is now down there. So you need to improve this quality in order to be capable of running such operations like in Eastern Kursk of 22 right now. And this is one of the reasons why the ZSU is running so few counterattacks, because the units are staffed by troops which cannot operate counterattacks, which, if they go all over the trench, would get shot down, all of them. The same is with officers. The officers are so incompetent that they are sending units in such counterattacks, and then people are getting killed in droves, by dozens, and nobody even knows that some counterattack has taken place because it failed right at the start. So the officers are incompetent, troops are poorly trained, and the use of weaponry is therefore, pointless, because the weapons are not effective. Weapons are always just as effective as the troops operating them are trained. So if the troops are poorly trained, the weapons are ineffective. If the troops are well trained, weapons are effective. It's as simple as that.
Tom, take into account the situation on the battlefields, on all battlefields. Mm-hmm. What scenarios are possible?
Right now, nothing. You can only hope for your government to come to its senses and to say, okay, we have to reform the armed forces, and we can't reform the armed forces with Sierski and current staff of the general staff of the armed forces. We can't reform. That means we have to replace all of the guys in the armed forces, at the top of the armed forces. At least the first 100-something top officers must go. Replace them with combat experienced officers, and then you can use this year to do what you should have done last year or the year before, which is to reform your armed forces, to write the new procedures along which the armed forces are trained, establish new quality standards for training, for operations, and so on. retrain the entire force gradually along these standards, and then you can think about doing something serious the next year. But if this doesn't happen, then you can't think even about the next year. You have to wait for 27 or 28, or whatever year after that.
Do you think that the stop of war is possible this year?
No, I don't see why. Look, take a look from Putin's point of view.
Yeah, it's a good position. Yeah, I agree.
Does he have a reason to stop? I don't see him having a reason to stop. Everything is fine.
No?
Everything is fine. He's cheered for what he's doing. Because at least to his public, he can always explain, oh, look, nobody is jobless. You are all earning greatly. And next month, you're going to get even higher wages. Everything is fine. So he has no reason to stop. On the contrary, he must import workers from Africa, from India, from Nepal, and from wherever else, because there are not enough workers in Ukraine, employees for the war production. And this is what he's doing. So actually, and I said, he's even okay, he's getting troops from North Korea as well. So you have a situation where everything is perfectly in his sense. He's in advantage. He's on advance, whatever kind of advance, even if it is 50 meters today and 5 meters tomorrow, and then perhaps 100 meters a month in specific sectors, and in another sector it's 1 kilometer per week or whatever. But he's on advance. As long as his troops are advancing, everything is fine. Things could be different or could get different if, for example, Ukraine would now reform really a large part of its armed forces, improve their efficiency so much that they can run a counter-offensive and hit the Russians hard and cause them losses like in September 22 or October 22. Then it would be different. But right now he has no problems even with all of these attacks by Ukrainian UAVs, which are hitting his oil industry or his ammunition storage depots or command centers. This is all too little to damage Russia seriously. And foremost, also Ukrainian strategic operations with UAV strikes are run in such a disorganized fashion that nobody actually can figure out what are they aiming to do. 1 week they are hitting refineries, then they are hitting command centers, then they are hitting oil depots, then they are hitting ports, then they are hitting factories, then they are back to refineries. I mean, excuse me, but what is the aim of this? Do you want to destroy the refineries, the oil industry, or the oil depots, or the factories, or what do you want to hit with them? I mean, if you want to destroy the oil industry, you have to continuously target the oil industry as well, and not just hit 2 or 3 refineries this month, and then 2 or 3 refineries next month, 3 or 4 refineries month after, then nothing at all for months, then a little bit again, and so on. This is, in military sense, this is not making any sense, especially not when one is fighting such a big war like this one, and then against Russia. Russia is feeling consequences only if you hit them really hard. And for this, you have to target 10, 15, 20 refineries within a week, or at least in 2 or 3 weeks, if you don't have enough means to do that within less time. But otherwise, you're changing nothing. And that's the problem also. Again, incompetence at the top. Sure, it is so that it was fortunate for Ukraine that certain gentlemen with a little bit of clue about UAVs, or a little bit more clue about UAVs and making UAVs, were clever enough to say, okay, we are not going to the Ministry of Defense, let's go to SBU and to Budyanov, and he's going to listen to us. And certainly enough, Budyanov is listening to them, and he is financing these long-range strikes, and this is why such operations are run by SBU. But this is not making him competent in terms of strategy. I said, again, one day they are hitting refineries, next day they are hitting factories, then they are hitting ports, then they are hitting command centers. There's no coherent strategy behind this. Instead, there should be a body, some sort of commission of top economists, of top intelligence sources, or representatives or top military strategist in Ukraine, this is also something that is absolutely unthinkable. Iran has had such a commission in 1980. Iraq had set up such a commission in 1984. People who have a clue where do they need to hit the opponent in order to hurt him seriously. And they wrote down a list of targets and said, okay, this is the refineries, this is the factories, this is the air bases, this is the ammunition depots, command centers, and so on and so on. So where shall we start with this list? And they walked themselves down this list, with the results that Iran has knocked out the Iraqi oil industry in a matter of 3 weeks. This industry didn't recover even in 88, 89, so after the war, Iraqi oil industry. In turn, Iraq has set up such a commission in 1984. Then Saddam Hussein was all the time meddling into the work of that commission, so they were targeting like Ukrainians are targeting right now. It was 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987. So it took 4 years for Saddam Hussein to let this commission work as it should. And then they started targeting Iranian oil refineries. And bing, in a matter of 3 months, Iran was unable to continue fighting the war, which is why Iran then accepted armistice of 1988. What a wonder. Just if you let the experts do their job, instead of taking decisions based on some politics or whatever kind of, this is how important, Ramstein meeting is coming, we have to launch an offensive in Kursk. This is what Zelensky did, when was it, 1 week ago, 10 days ago. Hurrah! It's a big offensive, it is this is that. Sends a column of vehicles to capture one Russian village, half of column is shot away. Okay, the rest, survivors managed to capture that village. But what is the overall result? It is just a political operation, politically motivated operation for no serious gain. Vehicles wasted, equipment wasted, troops wasted, most important of all, for actually no serious gain. In turn, the Russians are assaulting since 1 week and trying and pushing the Ukrainian troops back in northwest. So, I said, this is why there is a need for reform. Zelensky must stop meddling into military decisions. His task is actually to say to the armed forces, listen, you need to find a way to win this war. I am military, in regards of military affairs, I'm clueless, so I'm not going to meddle. You do what you find is necessary to do. I'm going to take care to give you the means to win this war. And then the armed forces should say, okay, guys, the way we are thinking, the way we are acting, this is going nowhere. We have to reform. You, and you, out of here. New guys in. So, are you good? Are you not good? Okay, who is good? You stay. The other guys, 3, you are not good. Another 3 from below. Replace them. Do your job. Are you doing? You guy over there. You are still not doing a good job. Okay, out of the office. The next one. And so reform until things are working. In the United States, after attack on Pearl Harbor, it took something like 6 months for this kind of reform to become effective. But then, boom, 100 aircraft carriers, who knows, 200 or 300, more destroyers, 60 divisions, enough tanks for, enough, all the kind of equipment, supplies, and so everything within 2 years to fight 2 major wars on opposite sides of the globe. In 2 years, after reform taking 6 months. In Ukraine, after 3 years, you have no production of mines. Your mortar bombs are faulty, and the Ministry of Defense has agreement with the company manufacturing such faulty mortar bombs. Oh, we are not going to talk about this. This is too sensitive. We draw some of mines from the front line, send it to other units. They are going to deal with it. This is such a dilettantism that the people, I'm not for capital punishment, but some of the people there belong being shot, nothing else. This is irresponsible without an end. I mean, I have to pull strings and call units and say, listen, there is a charge of 30,000 mortar bombs, caliber so-and-so, sent manufactured by company and so and so, and they're detonating if you try to shoot them out of your mortar. I mean, where are we? This is a kindergarten level.
Tom, thank you so much to be with us today. Thank you.
You are most welcome. I'm very sorry that under current circumstances the topic is not more pleasant.
But the situation is very complicated. Yeah, it's true.
It is sad, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so
much. I'm just one note for the end. I'm not in Ukraine. I'm not living in Ukraine. I'm not an Ukrainian. I have it easy to babble about things and to criticize. I know that plenty of my colleagues would like to say similar things, but they can't. And I beg your public to have understanding for this. It's not so easy to talk, to speak out that freely in Ukraine. When one is working in Ukraine or living in Ukraine or being a Ukrainian, it's much easier to do so from the outside.
Tom, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.